Team is Sussex.
Vince Lucas, business member of Kent and Midway Economic Partnership, board member of the Transport South East Partnership, representing Select.
Councillor Keith Daisy, leader of East Sussex County Council and board member on Select here of TFSE.
Mark Cockshill, leader of that council.
Thank you. And going to the screen, since David has got the seems to be grabbing the major part of the screen. David,
hi, David Rayner, Chair of Success Essex Board.
Perry, do you want to introduce yourself? Perry, can you hear?
Yeah, I can. Sorry. Yeah, Perry Gladding, Chair of OSC. Morning, everybody.
Mark Curl.
Good morning, Mark Curl, Chair of Essex Developers.
And Stephen George.
Good morning, everyone. Stephen George, leader of Southend City Council.
Great, thank you. You're all very welcome, particularly those I haven't. Roger as well. But Roger, I understand. Yes, Roger's here. Roger.
Good morning, Roger Goff, leader, Kent County Council.
Great, thank you. Then we'll go across the room from the attendees.
Lorna Norris, Essex County Council, representing the Capital Body.
Thank you, Lorna.
Ellen Dye, Programme Manager. James Simmons, Business Development Manager at Select.
Richard Dawson, Head of Services, Sussex County Council.
Aaron Anderson, Integrated Economic Partnership.
Jeff Miles, and Treasury Vice.
Then we have two people in the room. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Meg, and I'm Head of Creative Learning at Gas and Welding Company.
Thank you for hosting us.
I'm General Manager of Gas and
Thank you for hosting us. Thank you.
I'm Amy Ferraro, Governance Officer.
Great. Okay, Amy, are there any apologies to report?
Yes, there are. We have apologies from. Rodney Chambers, from Carol Ford, from Matthew Arnold, from Jeremy Kurzwell, Karen Cox, Penny Shimin, and from Councillor Graham Butland, who is nominated for appointment in item 5.
But we are, just to confirm, we are quorate.
Yes, we are.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, as I mentioned before, the meeting is recorded and will appear on our website, of course. Just to remind everybody of the accepted rules around Zoom and hybrid meetings, that those on Zoom, if they could keep themselves muted except when speaking, and if you wish to speak, if you could use the raise hand function, and we'll try and spot that you do wish to speak, and then I will call you in the order in which you raise your hands. For those who are attending in person, there will be a lunch after the meeting and also a tour of this great facility. The microphones are sensitive, I'm informed, so you need to make sure any informal comments are kept to a minimum. Should we move to votes, we will ask people to lower their raised hands between any consecutive votes so that we're crystal clear on the numbers of votes for each item. Okay, so the next item is minutes of the October meeting, which was chaired by Sarah in my absence. Sarah, can you confirm, as far as you're concerned, they are inaccurate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And does anyone have any comments on those minutes? So they're happy for me to sign them in due course. Thank you. Also, just as I always do, I want to remind everybody to keep their declarations of interest up to date and in their register. Are there any other declarations of interest for any of the matters under discussion this morning? Yes, Sarah, and then Councillor Wagland, and then Joe Jones.
Non-pecuniary interest, but I am co-chair of the South East Creative Economy Network, which is mentioned today.
Thank you, Councillor Wagland.
I think with effect from yesterday, I'm a director of the Freeport East Limited.
Okay.
And that's been forwarded into the various registers of interest, but it hasn't yet reached the stage of being on there.
Okay. And
although it's already on the register of interest, but since it's on the agenda, I thought I'd mention the GoFund.
Okay, thank you. So, Adam, we have a public question to address.
Yes, Chris, thank you. Board members who are also members of the Accountability Board would be aware of the process for the receipt of public questions and how we handle them. We also now take public questions to strategic board meetings as well. So if you bear with me, I will read all three parts of the question that we've received. So 3 separate questions in one. The rules state that we respond to a maximum of 1 question per questioner. So I'll be answering 1 question over the course of the next few minutes, and we will put answers to the other 2 questions and this one, of course, on the website within 10 working days. So if you bear with me as I read the question, I'll be very clear when I start my answer to the question. The question goes: I would like to put a question to the Strategic Board regarding Innovation Park Medway, part funded by CELEP over many years. 1, why was the decision taken to cease the evaluation strand of the funding, which would shed light by appraising the project to learn lessons from its poor governance and the lack of public accountability, which has led to disastrous delays? To date, there have been no minutes released despite requests of the project board which have been refused. Also, there's been no information released on when, where and who attended any meetings of this board. Part 2, when there is a change of strategy, is there any governance for this to be approved? We are aware that the search for suitable tenants has widened considerably from the original aims of the project, which were Innovation Park Medway is a high quality environment and location for high value technology industries, engineering, manufacturing and knowledge intensive industries. This cluster of high-tech companies share similar skills, infrastructure, ambition and drive, and offer opportunities for collaboration, innovation and skills retention. The core ambition for the IPM local development order is to create high-quality public realm with collaborative spaces supportive of innovation. The current search for tenants seems to be focusing on much more low-key office-based employment, which would not realise the original innovative aims of the park, which are reflected in its title. What mandate does the project board have to change the fundamental aspirations of Innovation Park Medway in this way? And the third part of the question: can the original strand of evaluation be added back into this project to get it back on track or salvage the project? I send this as a local member who has asked since its inception to be involved in the project, but has been cut out from the beginning. At one period of 6 months or so, I was appointed as a member to the project board, but there were no meetings during this period, and I was subsequently dropped from the position without explanation. So our response...
So before you get into that, sorry, Adam, did you say at the beginning who the question had come from? Are you allowed to say who the question had come from? You must be allowed to say who it come from.
I won't state who the question's from.
Not allowed to?
No.
Okay.
So we...
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
People can just put anonymous questions in. How do we know that this is someone who has, you know, it could be from someone from Timbuktu? Anybody from anywhere can ask a question. They don't have to identify themselves.
No.
But we're not allowed to say who. Really? It's what about transparency and accountability?
Well, I suppose the onus is on us to provide the transparency.
How do people feel about that?
It's absurd, but those are the rules. Those are the rules.
Are they the rules?
They are the rules. We'll check it out.
We just double check. So, I mean, I'm not comfortable actually having people just submit anonymous. Okay.
If I can continue, I'll provide an answer to the question. First part of the question. So the Local Growth Fund and Getting Building Fund service level agreements in place between each upper tier local authority partner, CELEP Limited and Essex County Council as accountable body for CELEP, place the following obligations on the council. The council is responsible for providing regular reports to the accountable body and the CELEP Secretariat in the timescales and formats specified by the CELEP Secretariat to enable quarterly reporting to the Accountability Board and to government. The service level agreement requires provision of information in relation to spend of the LGF and GBF funding allocation, total project spent to date, including match funding, project delivery against agreed milestones, outputs and outcomes forecast and delivered to date, identification of project risks and mitigation measures to be put in place, confirmation of expected project completion date and identification of any required changes to projects. The Growing Places Fund legal agreement places similar reporting responsibilities on Medway Council in relation to the loan funding awarded to deliver enabling works on the southern site at Innovation Park Medway. Furthermore, the Salop Assurance Framework states that capital grant projects, local growth fund and Getting Building Fund, are required to complete 1 year post-scheme completion evaluation and 3 5-year post-scheme completion evaluation reporting following Salop Limited's standard project evaluation templates for all projects. The 1 year post-scheme evaluation focuses on the delivery of the output stated within the original business case. This report provides a review of the lessons learned through the development and delivery of the project, as well as considering any project outcomes achieved to date. The 3 and 5 year post-scheme evaluation report focuses to a greater extent on the delivery of the outcomes of the project. Delivery of the enabling work supported by the Local Growth Fund and Getting Building Fund funding at the northern site of Innovation Park Medway is ongoing, with an expected completion date of February or March 2023. Consequently, submission of the 1 year post-scheme completion evaluation is not expected until March 2024. There's been no change in the reporting and monitoring and evaluation requirements as specified in the service level agreement and Salop Assurance Framework, and therefore these requirements continue to apply to the Innovation Park Medway project. And that concludes the answer. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. I think we should, just for future reference, we should just check the rules about transparency around who asks questions. And the reason for that is, from a governance point of view, is that that the questioner may well have an interest in the probably does have an interest in the outcome of all the in relation to the project. And I think it's important in the interest of transparency that they should identify themselves so that people can evaluate whether they have an interest or not. That doesn't mean saying one shouldn't answer the question, but it does put the question into a better context, in my opinion. So if we could just double check that.
We don't have to give that, but obviously the information we do check with the information given out information so that it can be provided with respect to this community.
Okay, because I mean the person actually did sort of identify themselves by saying that they were actually a project direct on the project board, and then went in and went out. So they kind of identified themselves anyway. Okay. All right, let's move on then. Thank you, Adam, very much for that.
Thanks, Chris.
So this is a great facility, as I mentioned, and just so people are aware that this particular project has benefited from a 1.6 million Growing Places Fund loan and a grant of 600,000 from the Getting Building Fund. So we have Meg Saunders here today. Welcome, Meg, who is the head of creative learning here at Desmond Barthelme, to introduce us to the company and the new facility and the sector overall. And perhaps you could, Meg, at the same time, I'm sure you're going to cover this, but just the benefits that that the local community get from having Desmond Barthelme based here in Nashford.
Absolutely, yes. Well, yeah, thank you. It's such a pleasure to welcome you all here, finally, to JB Home, which is our home for dance, performing arts and creative activity here in Ashford. So it's a real honour and a real pleasure to have you all here. We officially opened on Wednesday. However, we have been in the building, getting going, finding our way around since about May and June. So it's a real pleasure to have you here. And of course, huge thanks for your contribution to making this all happen, along with Kent County Council, the Arts Council in England, and Ashford Borough Council as well. So without all of that support, including from Salop, then none of this would have been possible. I thought what might be nice to give you a sense of what we're doing here and why we're here and what we're up to is to actually just give you a sense of what we're doing over these few days. And I'll talk you through some of the statistics and some of the opportunities that are happening rather than giving you a potted history. So today, here we are, and in JV1, which is our purpose-built production space, we are hosting 2 performances today, and one is for a schools performance. So yesterday also, we had over 100 young people from Ashford and Kent coming to watch Alice, which is a professional piece of work created by internationally acclaimed choreographer Yasmin Barthelme, and it was created here at JB Home. So in May this year, we started creating a piece, and the cost of normally creating a piece is huge in terms of the hire and the production week. So normally a dance company would have to go hire a theatre for thousands of pounds for the week, get all the lighting done, and then take it off to somewhere like Sadler's Wells. Now we're able to create a piece, do the production week, and then tour it. So Alice has been on tour around the UK and was at Sadler's Wells, and now it's here at Ashford. 100 school kids came yesterday. 144 members of the public, sold out auditorium yesterday, came to watch it. We've got another 100 school kids coming today and another sold out performance this evening. So already in the first 2 days of officially being opened, we're really giving people access and opportunity to see really high quality work for, you know, extremely subsidised tickets for local people. Some of the schools that came yesterday walked here, which is fantastic. You know, otherwise there'd be coaches and trains and extremely expensive tickets to sit in the third tier in London theatres. Also, one of the schools that came yesterday was Herne Bay High, and one of our performers in the professional production, performers come from all over the world, Australia, Spain, Belgium, went to Herne Bay High, and his secondary school came to watch him yesterday performing the professional production, which is fantastic. And so again, lots of tears and teachers and proud pictures, but it really goes to show some of the things in the talent pipelines that we've been working on since we arrived in Ashford in 2012, and how they're really coming into fruition, even now at this early stage, and how into the future, what we're able to do under one roof will help develop and feed that. So I've got a few documents that I'll leave next door for you as well, but there is one about Don, who's the journey of that particular performer. He came up through our talent pipeline. So he was a member of the Yasmin Vardaman Youth Dance Company, which was a relationship we had with the Gulbenkian. And then he became a participant on our JV Intensive programme, which is one of our training programmes. We have a designated training studio here at JV Home. And then he was a participant on our JV2 programme, which is a professional development diploma, preparing people for professional practice, and is now working as a professional company member. So it gives an example of what we're doing here, which is trying to piece together opportunities for young people from Kent towards employment and opportunity within the creative sector. So that's some of what's been happening in JV1 over the last couple of days. And in JV2, which is our dedicated training space, which is our other studio downstairs, is where we run our professional development programme. So we have a real commitment to offering opportunities and employment to young people. So JV2 are with us for 6 months. The new building has enabled us to do 2 cohorts per year because we're no longer operating from one space. And again, it gives people a real insight into professional practice. We have opportunities for young lighting designers, for costume designers. We're working with Rose Bruford College and London College of Fashion to give opportunities for technical skills development. We have a brilliant technical box and control room. So not only can we start to train people in movement and creative activity, we can also really develop technical skills and employability in the kind of the range of opportunities there are within our sector. And I think another really important thing to mention about JV2 is that there's a fantastic rate of employment after them. So 30% of our graduates, we've been running it since 2012, have been directly employed by the company following graduation. In the last few weeks, we've had the Royal Opera House here. They've hired our space, our JV1 production space. Yasmin has choreographed a section for Tannhauser, which is a new opera that will be performed at the Royal Opera House in February. And we've been able to engage 12 of our dancers, 9 of which are graduates from our JV2 programme. So again, the opportunities for them to be able to train here, to develop here, get employed by the Royal Opera House, go and perform in Covent Garden. And again, it's really part of the business model that we're working on here, which is about cross-pollination of actually being able to train people, opportunities for local young people, and then get them employed into the sector. And I think what has been so brilliant, and I kind of knew in theory, but I'm now seeing in practice, having it all under one roof is where that kind of becomes tangible and powerful. So there's been some brilliant examples. I'll talk now a little bit more about some of the schools that we work with. We've got an associate school programme which we developed, which is to make sure that we were really working with young people in Ashford and Kent. So we work with 6 local schools, and they come to us quarterly, and we have meetings. We work in partnership with teachers, and we're doing workshop opportunities, performance opportunities, and our associate school and many of the schools that are coming to watch Alice over these 2 days. And I think what's been wonderful, they come downstairs, they do a workshop, they physically get involved, they go up to our archive room, which is where we have 25 years worth of posters, flyers, trailers, all of that stuff that kind of makes, again, that history tangible. And then they pop into the studio and watch the professionals rehearsing. And actually, when I'm in JV1 with them, the big studio, I sit them down and I say, okay, right, how many jobs can you think of when we're putting on a show? And of course, we start with the dancers, and then we go to the choreographers, and then we slowly move to the lighting designers and the costume designers, and then we head on to the producers and the marketing team, and the likes of myself. And so what I'm really hoping that we can do is really show young people actually that dance is a lovely thing to do on a Saturday morning, but it is also a really viable industry where kind of the type of investment you've helped support really goes on to give people opportunities to create, to perform, but also to engage and have kind of employability and skills development while we're here. And I love that, you know, a school around the corner can walk here to see all of that in action happening together. So there's something that's been really powerful about that. This is our third studio, which is, again, is one part of the design of the building is that it is very versatile and flexible. And this is, as well as being designated for hire for events like the one today, it will also be allocated for community classes. So starting from early next year, we'll be launching our classes programme, which will be for the local community from 5 to 105, if they so wish, which will be for all ages and abilities, a focus on health and wellbeing. The company have a lot of Pilates is a very important part of the company's practice, along with creative dance. And again, we're not a kind of company that teaches people steps. It's about creative expression and improvisation and expressing yourself through movements. So there'll be a whole series of classes programs that happens every day, giving those from all over the community access to creative activity here, as well as practitioners able to lead their own work. So much to say. It's hard to come, but hopefully it's given you a little sense some of the cross-pollination and the things that are happening here. Just to give you a couple of statistics. So we officially opened on Wednesday. We've been here as an office staff since about June. And in these first 4 months, before we even really know how the light switches work, we've had 234 participants across 13 activities do it from the local community, engaging in workshops and things here. And we've had 35 visits from local organisations. So as well as talking about community engagement and young people, actually having you guys here is really important. We had Creative Kenton Medway here last week, and we've got again more bookings. We've got Playgrounds here on Saturday. I'm not sure if any of you know about Playground. It's one of the new national portfolio organisations through Kent County Council, which is about providing creative activity for 0 to 5-year-olds. And they're doing their practitioner training here on Saturday. So as well as having kind of lovely creative activity for the community, we're also really hoping to provide a space where the sector can meet and network and connect, and again, cross-pollinate. So I do hope some of you are able to go on a tour at midday with Ian Ross, our Executive Director, and also get a peek in and see some of that activity in action as well, and get a sense of what it is that we're doing here. So yes, I'm very happy to answer any questions if there is anything you'd like to ask at this point. There's a couple of films next door, while you have a pastry and a coffee. I recommend that you watch as well. That will show you the building as a building site. It's got some speakers from that have contributed to the development of the programme and the project. It will give you a sense of some of the physicality and the movement of the young people that we work with. And it just is a great pleasure to have you all here and get going and get moving. So yeah, thank you very, very much for your support. And yes.
So thank you very much, Meg. I mean, this is a wonderful facility. It's great to hear the effect that you're having in the community, which is obviously what we're mostly about, is creating economic growth and all the opportunities and the employment opportunities in particular. Are there any questions for Meg from the board? Okay.
I wondered what comes next in terms of the ambition. So this is obviously a huge statement. There aren't many dance companies that would be able to establish themselves in a facility like this. Where does the ambition go after that?
Well, onwards and upwards, right? So we'll continue to, we're not a theatre, we're not a venue as such, but we'll continue to open our doors to public engagement, to come and see really quality work. We'll continue to make work here, we'll continue to do our training programmes and widen them. There's one thing I forgot to mention about the training programme is a real commitment to ensuring that barriers to participation are eliminated as much as possible. So we offer bursaries, and many of those that have been part of the journey here. Some of you might know about our relationship with MacArthur Glen, which is a designer outlet here in Ashford. And so we had a temporary home in the outlet to kind of say, hello Ashford, here we are, this is who we are, come and get involved. And they've very kindly given us some bursaries towards the fees for the students to get involved to it, along with WW Martins, the builder. It's also given a bursary along with Stage Electrics, who did the electrics here, also a contributing bursary towards the technical training that we're doing for some of the students from Rosebery College. So again, gathering that, making sure that as much as we can diversify and give those opportunities to as many people as possible. So we can do brilliant work with the young people of Ashford, but actually if they can't afford to come and train, actually, you know, if we find these kind of cliff edges, so I really want to make sure and work on making sure that those opportunities are available for as many people as possible, and we really work to eliminate those barriers to access to these opportunities as much as we can. The classes programme, making sure the doors are open for people to come and get involved and get active. I think there's some really, Anna and I are already kind of grappling about the hire. There's lots of interest in hiring spaces. And again, companies coming to do their own production weeks. I mentioned cost of doing production weeks elsewhere, and actually something now is we can get other companies, people from around the country who are already inquiring about coming to hire this space, do their production week, and then the next day they can be at South Wales, you know, which is lovely. And again, bringing that kind of global recognition and talent down here to Ashford, I love. You know, the cafe downstairs is a brilliant hub. So as you might know, the Creative Enterprise Quarter also hosts Kent Music, our neighbours. We've got a partnership project planned with them in February. So we're working with the Ashford Leeds, the schools there. So we're doing a day where the music students and dance students come together and collaborate from local schools. And I love already that our cafe manager knows all the different businesses, so he'll come in and just chat with them. And so hopefully the cafe will become a hub where people can connect and meet as well. I'm sure I'm missing lots of things. People in developing the work with the schools as well, absolutely. And we're also in conversation with certain dance companies and organisations and charities as well, actually, about how they can utilise the space. So there's certain charities that might want to host meetings of some of the people that they work with in some of our spaces, or hire rooms for counselling, or so we're having some quite interesting work about how we can accommodate a whole range of kind of organisations and meet people's needs in a creative space. Oh, one thing I wanted to say is we had the senior leadership team of one of the local schools planning their curriculum, because we've got a lovely meeting room and they wanted to do it outside of school, and I loved that they were planning the whole curriculum for the school in a creative space. And I thought, yes, subliminally, we're getting there, you know. There's something about that we can host all these different things happening under one roof, and whether they're talking about the curriculum review or about creative activity itself, it's all here and can all be kind of felt and experienced under one roof.
Wonderful, Meg, thank you very much, and thank you again, once again, for hosting us. I must say, one of the great pleasures I've had in my time at SELUP has been seeing our projects come to life. Yeah. And this is one of our projects that's come to life. And you look at the medical school just up the road, it's things like that we've done over the course of the last 10, 12 years of our life, I guess. That's what makes my role and our role as a board, I think, really fantastic, because we see these things really come to life. So it's great. And thank you once again for hosting us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Okay. We'll move on to the mid-year review. Adam.
I'll have to bring a conversation down.
To maintain the same level of energy.
The 11th sensitive ones. I feel like I need to talk to the camera as well. Still was everyone in the room, so to kick me. I'm not going to go on for too long, but I think we had a recent mid-year review of government, which served to highlight a couple of issues I just wanted to bring to the board, and given that we're all together, and actually the main part, it's a good opportunity. Next slide, please, Amy. So a few weeks ago, we sat with some of the civil service supporters. Obviously went through the normal conversation around delivery, governance strategy. As has been usual, I think, over the course of those meetings. It's really a really positive conversation, and really good to sort of get a lot of affirmation of the things that we're doing. So, you know, trying to take our day-to-day body work in the right way, you know, reporting very thoroughly on where we are against the capital programme, what we need to do to make sure that we've got all of that away over the course of the next few months. And then obviously, you know, we're always proud about the way that we run the governance operation for the LEP, and, you know, I'll still stand here and say that the way that we do the strategic board and the accountability board is best in practice, is best practice across all LEPs, and I think it makes the case and gives a really solid foundation for what we do. A couple of things came from the conversation that I wanted to put a bit of emphasis on today. So firstly, is that the original LEP review, so strengthened local enterprise partnerships, which came out back in 2018, I think, had an initial focus on changing LEP boards. If you recall, it took us back to incorporating LEPs, which obviously we did, changing the membership of the board and then giving it very much a business majority, which of course we did, a number of other things that we achieved, and ensuring that at least a third of board members were female was something absolutely that we did as well. Within that was an aim to achieve gender parity on the select board by 2023, and that deliverable remains. Now, it's important to say that it's something that we need to strive to achieve, and as quickly as we can do it. But, and I'll get into a bit more detail on it in a second. It's really important that we do it for much more important reasons than that. This isn't just about meeting a target that was set by government a few years ago. It's about being a modern board that's fit for the modern day. So making sure that we can have the right representation across the board is something that we need to put some focus on over the course of the next few months. That's not forgetting the fact that obviously we all know that change is afoot in terms of LEPs, but I think that doesn't stop us from doing the right thing in the meantime. A really important thing, and this really came from the tenor of the conversation that we had with civil servants, was really around confidence. And that's about retaining the confidence of the board. So I would take that as a sort of personal message to me in enabling you to understand the body of work that we continue to deliver, that we're doing the right things and that we present in a positive way. So that's something that's important, but also obviously providing as stable an environment for the team to work in as is possible, which is something that is also really important to me. And we know that we can operate in broadly the way that we are at the moment until March 2024 at least. What happens beyond that, I think, is all slightly unknown. Obviously some local partners are moving quickly around devolution, around 11 at white paper, what that might mean. We have to be part of those conversations. We are part of those conversations, and it's just about understanding the impact that has on not necessarily SELEP as an entity, but the body of work and where it's delivered, and being looped into that is really important. And as you will have discerned from the agenda, we do have the recruitment panel have a recommendation in respect of where we go with the chairship of the LEP. And I think some of the early round of meetings that the new chair would have potentially with senior members of the board, in fact the whole board and other stakeholders, will be important to reinforce some of the messages that I talked about already, but obviously a lot of other things about what the body of work should look like. I did read an email not so long ago where somebody disputed the fact that this was ever put upon us as something to aim for, but just for proof, here's a section of the Strengthened Local Enterprise Partnerships, what the words get wrong, document that was out in July 2018, and very clearly states what we need to do government size by 2023. So that remains really important, and that we are absolutely focused on. I think Chris, this document you remember really well from the conversations you had with Jake Berry at the time, which no doubt are a highlight of the past 6 years.
But also more importantly, Greg Clark before.
Yes. Next slide, please, Amy. So I had a conversation a few weeks ago with the LEP network just to get a flavour, just so we know how we compare really with other LEPs across the country. And this is what I got back. I won't read all the stats, but obviously there are things there that are either really surprising or not at all surprising. I'll let you make your own mind up on what you make of that, but clearly there's something to aim for. I mean, I was really shocked that only 1% of board members of LEPs are aged between 25 and 34. But it might be a little bit more than that. But that's just one of those things that really stuck out. And when you look at the one around gender parity, 10 LEPs have got 50% or more women, which is all credit to them. We fall into that third category there, as it stands at the moment, and we've got a vacancy on the board as well, which kind of dips us under where we were originally. It's absolutely an area for us to focus on over the coming months, and it's something we'll pick up obviously with board members, but also with federated boards, with our local authority partners as well, just to see how we can get that mix right, because you know we do still have an important job to do, and we need to ensure that we are structured in the right way and executing that. So just focusing a little bit on the work that we do, just to sort of bring a bit of colour to it really. So there are some things that we'll continue to do, and then I was going to talk about some of the areas that we probably need to new do. A lot of this is really familiar, doesn't reduce in terms of its importance. Obviously, looking at the bottom left hand side of the screen, the work we do around skills will continue to be important in whatever guise, for example. So either the stuff that we do directly, so the skills advisory panel is an example, but also, and it's easy to say because I'm right in front of me, feeding into the LTIPs as well, and supporting those and getting going to do the roles that they need to do. So Anna, who's leading the one across Sussex, is obviously an important connection in that respect. The major projects group, we mention it really often, but it's continues to be really important. That this is a collection of the big projects that we're investing across the patch over the coming years, whether it's Lower Thames Crossing, whether it's the Garden Communities, UK HSA, conversations around nuclear, and all the big ticket items that are going to have that are likely to have an impact in the patch and require a conversation about construction skills, about supply chain development. They want to talk on a regional basis, and that isn't something that we necessarily push hard, nor do we sort of chair it hard either. They want to come together under our aegis to have that conversation, and it's a real pleasure to be involved in those conversations, because you see those links being made and you see those ideas being taken forward, and that is of course something that we continue to facilitate and convene. Because one of the messages from government is that one of the key roles of LEPs is to convene business. I don't think there's a better example of that better than that. The rest, I won't read through all of the rest of it. You get a sense of all the things that keep us busy on a day-to-day basis. So the final slide is really about, I think it's the final slide, it's really about the new or human areas of work. So I've already talked about supporting devolution. That is really important in terms of being able to sort of bring 10 years worth of learned experience to all those conversations about what comes next. There is an £800 million capital programme that's been very capably supported by this organisation. There is expertise in how to connect around economic growth, sits in the team. All of those things, whatever structure exists into the future, all of those components, what this level has achieved, need to feed into those conversations. And as I stand here today, I think I can reflect that we are starting to have those conversations that are more meaningful and granular level than I think we have before. So, it's something that we'll continue to absolutely do, but should be really clear that it's an expectation from government that we do that as well. And that's an expectation on us as a LEP, but also on local partners in the sense of reaching out and engaging. Something else that we're talking about doing is actually, I've called it State of Region report here. We might call it something else, but a real strength of the LEP at the moment is the data and intelligence that sits with us, that kind of is relevant across the whole area, and has been developed on a sector basis and on other bases over the course of the last number of years. Couple that with relationships that we have with business intermediary bodies, we think we're in a good position actually, to whatever extent it's useful, to start to sort of put out some outward collateral around assessing where the local economy is. And it'd be really important and interesting piece of analysis to get out right now. Obviously, these are the kinds of documents can never be dead documents, they're always going to be updated. But what we think we've got the capability to be able to say something really interesting on where the economy across the southeast is, and it's something that we would intend to do. One of the things that's also really important, I'm just picking a few of these out because I just don't want to, I'm very conscious that I'm probably not as interesting as Meg was a few minutes ago. The capital programme, the audit of the capital programme, the kind of legacy piece around talking about the impacts of investments that the left made is really, really critical, both in obviously celebrating what this board has achieved, but also informing what comes next. We need to be really open about the things that work well, maybe things that haven't gone so well, and put that down in a place. And actually put the left on a pedestal for some of the things that it's done, because for lots of reasons in the past, the light's been hid under a bushel from time to time. And I think it's really important that we're able to shine a light on the area, on the project, on the project like this, that either we've had a small hand in or a big hand in, and made a real impact on the local economy and the regional economy as well. So that's going to be really important to get right. It's just a question as ever of being able to resource it, but I'll be really keen that that's something that we do. The other thing, and it links to conversation we'll have shortly, is Growing Places Fund. And just to be clear on that, so we do have Growing Places Fund that's been paid back into the pot. We've also got some projects there that are yet to pay back, and some projects that are looking at longer payback periods. But whilst we've got some money in the pot as we have, it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we get it spent on projects and reinvested in projects and to revolve it and iterate it in the way that we should. Now, the only reason we haven't run a further round of Growing Places Fund thus far is simply that we haven't been able to resource it. We just haven't had the time to do it. Quite simple. But really keen to make sure that when we can, that we do. So that's something we've got planned for the early part of the next financial year, is to really get motoring on that and see what we can do to obviously get the money out, but be innovative in the way that we do it. What else can we team up with? Do we look at those initiatives that might come through from government and team up with those, run it on a sectoral basis, or just do it in the way we've done it in the past? All of those things we need to work through, but it gives us a sort of ongoing role in respect of supporting capital projects, which I think is really important, because it's one thing sort of being a left for the next year and a bit, and sort of having conversations around strategy and sort of doing bits here and there and trying to extend a bit of influence, but it's something else when you're talking about investing in capital projects as well. And I think that's really important in terms of where we go. I think that might be the last slide, Amy. Yeah, I haven't got much to say about this slide. That logo is free, provided by a student some years ago. It's sort of so there you go. But,
good, Adam. Thank you very much. Has anyone got any comments or observations on Adam's A from the either from the mid-year review or from the programme of work that Adam has set out? I think that's approval. Absolutely. Okay, we'll move on then in that case. Appointment of directors, Amy.
So as mentioned at the previous meeting, we were waiting for the nomination from the Essex local authorities for their co-opted seat. This has now come through after a meeting yesterday of the Essex leaders and chief execs, and they have asked to renominate Councillor Graham Butland. So the board is now asked to appoint Councillor Butland as a director for the remainder of 22-23.
Until March 31st, 23. Okay. Can I have your votes on that, please? And can we see from the screens? Yes, I'm getting some votes. I think that is unanimous. So we'll report to that as unanimous votes. Okay, thank you.
There is a second decision relating to the co-opted seats for next year. So the board previously agreed these seats would rotate between the areas or be assigned strategically as appropriate. So far, Essex has had a representative for all of the last 3 years. So it's proposed that next year representatives are from Kent and East Sussex.
Okay, how do people, are people happy with that? Very just to be equitable, so let's votes resolve that. Thank you. Okay, I think it's unanimous as well, Amy. Good, okay, in that case, move on to item 6, which is the capital programme update. So Helen, please can you update the board on matters relating to the capital programme?
Yes, thank you. So this report provides the usual update on the capital programme, including the Getting Building Fund, Local Growth Fund and Growing Places Fund. I'm just going to focus on the 2 decisions that are in the paper and a recent development in relation to the Getting Building Fund programme. Obviously at the end, I'm happy to respond to questions on any part of the report. So the report details one project which is seeking approval for retention of its GBF funding allocation to the 31st of March 2023. The TechFort project was awarded funding in February 2022, and at that time it was expected that the project would complete in December. Accordingly, a 9-month extension was agreed by this board and the Accountability Board. Since the award of funding to the project, significant progress has been made, with both planning and scheduled monument consents being secured in May 2022. In addition, a contractor has been appointed and work has commenced on site. However, it has now been confirmed that the project will not complete in December as anticipated. The delivery programme has been extended due to the need for more extensive revetment wall work to ensure the quality of the project is maintained. In addition, the process to discharge the conditions attached to the planning and scheduled monument consents has taken longer than anticipated. As a result, a further extension of 3 months to the 31st of March 2023 was agreed by the Accountability Board at their last meeting, subject to endorsement by this board. If I just move on, so as the board will recall, the GBF project pipeline was broadly agreed at the last meeting, with the inclusion of the prioritised Success Essex projects being agreed via electronic procedure. The Success Essex board agreed that all 3 projects, which was the Jaywick Market and Commercial Space, Tyndall Square and the extension of 4 fibre broadband rollout in Essex to reach rural and hard to reach premises projects, were all important and should therefore all receive additional GBF funding. To enable this, each project accepted a reduced GBF funding allocation compared to that which was originally sought, with the resultant funding gap being bridged by the delivery partner in each case. As set out in the report, the Success Essex board requested that consideration be given to the inclusion of the remaining balance sought by each of the 3 projects in the final GBF prioritised project pipeline. At this meeting, as set out in the report, the board are being asked to agree the principle of including these projects in the pipeline. It wasn't possible to present a final prioritised pipeline for consideration at this meeting without a confirmed prioritisation from the Success Essex board. The report indicates that prioritisation will be needed to inform the decision of this board at the next meeting. However, this need may have been negated as a result of the development that I'm just about to talk about. But if the board do not agree that the projects are included in the pipeline, the resultant funding gap will be bridged by the delivery partners as originally agreed. So to move on to the recent developments, so as set out in the report, there have been a number of concerns regarding the ongoing deliverability of projects which involve Swan Housing, as their future remains unclear. It was expected that a merger with Sanctuary Housing Association would complete on the 30th of November. However, it's my understanding this has been delayed and it's not yet completed. However, it is still expected to happen. One of the projects identified as high risk was the Swan Modular Housing Factory project, which has received a GBF allocation of 4.53 million. Swan Housing have recently informed Essex County Council they are closing their modular factory operations and will therefore be returning the GBF funding awarded to support delivery of the project. A timeline for repayment of the GBF funding by Swan Housing has not yet been confirmed, and Essex County Council are actively seeking a meeting with Swan to discuss this further. Under the terms of the SLA, the full GBF allocation can be clawed back from Essex County Council, regardless of whether Swan Housing have repaid the funding that they have received. And this approach will need to be used if Swan Housing are unable to repay Essex County Council in a timely manner. My focus is now on how we can most effectively manage the reallocation of the funding to maximise spend by the 31st of March 2023 in accordance with government expectations. I've undertaken some initial engagement with local partners in relation to the projects on the agreed pipeline. And indications are that a sizable number of the projects on the pipeline could spend additional GBF funding by the 31st of March if award of the funding is confirmed in January. As it stands, the next accountability board meeting isn't scheduled to take place until the 10th of March. Realistically, we will now not be able to spend the full GBF funding allocation by the 31st of March, as expected by government. And in addition, the amount of funding available exceeds the value of the pipeline. Advice has been sought from government as to how these issues should be managed, and a formal response is awaited. Failure to complete GBF spend by the 31st of March represents a reputational risk for both SELEP and the responsible upper tier local authorities. And therefore, from my perspective, it's important that we take steps where possible to minimise this risk and to maximise GBF spend over the remainder of the financial year. To this end, we could, if there is sufficient support from accountability board members, arrange an additional accountability board meeting to take place in January, which would solely focus on the removal of the Swan Modular Housing Factory project from the programme and reallocation of the funding to projects which can complete GBF spend by the 31st of March. If the government position with regard to spend of the GBF beyond March 2023, and we may be able to also award funding to projects which will extend into 23-24 at that meeting. If there is not support for an additional accountability board meeting, or if board members do not have sufficient availability to ensure that we can reach quorum, we will need to delay the funding decisions until the already scheduled March 23 accountability board meeting. But this will increase the amount of GBF spend beyond March 2023 and may mean that some projects on the pipeline are no longer able to benefit from the available funding. I would appreciate any indication from accountability board members who also attend this board as to whether there is support for an additional accountability board meeting so that we can plan accordingly. Now, I realise I've just given you a lot of information which wasn't in the board paper, but I'm happy, and I'm still trying to process this and plan through it myself, but I'm happy to respond to any questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Helen. Are there any, before we get into the response from the potential accountability board members, are there any? There's yeah, there are questions. I can see there are 1 or 2 questions. I've got Roger and then David. Are there any, and Joe around the table here. So let's start with Joe.
I just wanted to ask, could we formally ask as a strategic board, the accountability board, to meet in January? I know it's going to be very difficult, but you know, the next meeting isn't till later in the year, and that's just going to be too late. Yeah. So you know, if you look from one perspective, look at the other projects, we've got Discovery Park and Technical, you know, they would need early notification to enable spend. There's no point having a board meeting in March and saying this won't happen. So really, you know, by the sort of 13th of January, early on in January, and then that gives them, you know, the project promoters time to actually get the money spent, which is what we need to.
This board could do that, Jim.
Yeah.
Could do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The other two other points, as we've got the money coming back, which is 4.53, the projects on the list are about 2.8. What's happening to the remainder? You know, how are the rest of the allocated funds going to be spent? There are projects. You know, I'm just looking. Obviously, every area's got projects, so I'm just looking from Ken. You know, we've got things like Bannock Parkway, Innovation Park, Medway. You know, that wanted additional funding because of the increased costs because of COVID pressures. So we're wondering whether, you know, money could be looked at those projects that were already on the list. But again, you know, early notification would be needed to enable spend.
Yes, in the first instance, there are 2 projects which are currently sitting just outside the pipeline because we had deliverability concerns. So we would revisit those 2 East Sussex projects to see if they now meet the criteria and would seek agreement from this board to move them into the pipeline. That would take the unallocated balance down to just over £500,000. We have sought some advice from government because obviously we have just run a process to come up with a new pipeline, and it is a timely process, a time-consuming process, and we would need to see if we went down that route, we'd need to see applications from all areas. And realistically, that spend would still extend beyond March just because of the time it takes for that process. So I am waiting on response from government. There's a couple of options that we've proposed plans. As soon as I've got any advice from government, I'll be able to confirm.
Okay. What we don't want to do is for things to wait because of proposed board deadlines.
No.
You know, we've been really successful with making decisions through electronic procedures. It's worked well for us.
Yes.
So, we have got projects there. I could name them from Kent, somebody could name them from another area that they're waiting, and we don't want to be held up by deadlines. No. Thanks.
Okay, shall we move to the screen? I've got just going in the order that they've I see them. Roger, you go first.
Yeah, thank you. Just, I would say, apologies. I certainly think we should indeed go for that early accountability board. And as a member of that board, very happy to make myself as available as I can in January. In fact, quickly looking at my diary, particularly the earlier parts, there's actually quite a number of opportunities. So I think because not only is it about those getting the money committed and spent, hopefully by the end of March, but even where there are projects that, if government agrees, we have to spend some money beyond March, then at least we are getting even that going as early as possible, and we all know how these things slip. So I would certainly be available, and would hope that my colleagues on the board would be similarly minded.
Thank you, Roger. That's very helpful. David.
Yes, thanks, Chair, and thank you, Roger, for saying that. As you know, I've said quite a number of times, we obviously must make sure there is appropriate due diligence in all of these, but it does seem to take quite a long time, too long, to move from projects coming forward to actually getting the funding. So if we could have that additional accountability board meeting, I think extremely helpful and very much welcomed. The only other thing I wanted to say was, obviously we do have the pipeline list already, which I'm assuming we would just go to with, I hope, if it's approved at this meeting, the addition of the, if I can call it, the gap funding from the 3 Success Essex board projects, which are currently being met by their sponsor bodies, which hopefully would be possible, but obviously that's up to this board meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So what I propose we do is, were there any other questions or observations? Yes, Sarah.
So just with my hat as chair of Accountability Board, I had to endorse the trying to get together as quickly as possible to do this. Just for clarification, people might not know, but Accountability Board legally has to meet in person.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we can't do it virtually, so we will have to find a date where we can all meet in person, which is why sometimes it's more challenging than others. But
does the Accountability Board have to be chaired by someone who is not the chair of the Strategic Board?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's another wrinkle. Well, maybe another wrinkle, depending on what happens later in the meeting. But that's something else that needs to be borne in mind. We'll come back to, perhaps we'll park that for the time being, that particular point.
It's not an insurmountable problem.
Okay, all right, fine. So let's go this sort of in sequence. So the first part of this is the Tech Fort extension from the 31st of December to the 31st of March. Is that acceptable to the board? Okay, I mean, I would say that this project has slipped a couple of times.
This is the first time it's slipped. It was only awarded funding in February this year.
Oh, okay, my mistake. Okay, so we're okay, fine. So that's good. Okay, and as far as can we have that approved? Okay, fine, thank you. So that's that one done. The second one then is in relation to the Getting Building Fund and the reallocations, etc., and the Accountability Board. I think there is, Sarah. I think there is a groundswell of enthusiasm for holding an accountability board in January to address these points. And I think that's all we're being asked. That's all we're being asked for at this time. Is that right?
And the Success Essex, the inclusion of the Success Essex.
And the inclusion of Success Essex. Is people happy with that?
Particularly that's the top up.
Sorry, yeah, the top up. Yeah,
top up.
Yes.
Part of the plate.
Yeah, with the exception of the Swan housing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
With Swan housing being taken away,
Taken out of it.
there is enough funding to cover the remaining balance sought by the Success Essex project and everything else that's on the pipeline, so it won't impact on any other project.
So is everyone happy with that? Okay. Is there anything else, Helen, that we have to agree at this time?
No, I don't think so. I'll go away and work with Amy to try and find a date.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we've done that, haven't we? So we are now on to are we on to Sector Support Fund? Okay, Adam, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. So in the paper, we've got an update on a number of projects, but the key one to cover is just in relation to the CCAN Creative Open Workspace Master Plan Prospectus project, which is looking for an extension on its delivery programme from 30th September to 31st December this year. And also to agree on a reduction in plan benefits and in the sector support fund allocation as well. Should say the project has delivered some good stuff already. So there's a prospectus in place, due to also bringing forward a report on creative opportunity zones as well. So all on track to, you know, in a rescope projects to complete within the deadline that I've just discussed. Should be, I want to be really positive about the project and thank people involved for honesty and integrity in terms of how they're applying the sector support fund grant, being very clear that, you know, some things couldn't be delivered within the timescale set by the limitations on the select funding, and in recognising that, the project is therefore being sort of clawed back a little bit. Doesn't take away from the fact that what it represents is a really good, as CCAN has through the years, a really positive collaboration across the sector. As I said, has produced one good deliverable already, is to produce another one as well in the timescale before December. So whilst on the face of it, the recommendation I feel negative, I think I would be very positive about it in terms of both respecting the framework of the select funding, but also being very clear on what's been able to be meaningfully delivered in that time envelope. So I think I'll probably leave my comments there, but except to say, you know, thank you to those involved in delivering what's been delivered thus far.
Good. Any questions for Adam on that? Yes, Sarah.
It wasn't a question, it was just a comment, really. Obviously, if I put my co-chair of CCAN hat on, I'd just like to, you know, the officers have worked really hard on this and I'd like to thank them. The reality is at the moment that they've had to concentrate some of their time on the Create Growth bid, which was successful. So it's kind of an interesting how you juggle all of those different priorities at the same time. But the ambition is for, even though we won't be, the aim is not claiming all of the money, the ambition is actually the outputs will all be delivered, just not within the timescale that Select needs. So we'll still get on with that work. And I think the important thing also to notice is that creative enterprise zones are becoming things that are talked about, and in the north they are being developed a lot. And I think it would be a shame if we didn't continue to look at that area.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So what we're being asked to do is to endorse the change request from the CCAN Creative Open Workspace Master Plan and Prospectus. And are we prepared to endorse that? Thank you. Good. Okay, the next item is the Freeport East membership. Adam.
Thanks, Chris. So on the membership of Freeport East, I'll try and avoid going through and repeating everything in the paper.
Take those read.
Yeah, indeed. The reason for recommending to the board that we don't register as a formal member of Freeport East Limited, I think is fairly self-evident from the content of the paper. I think when you look at, I guess there are two elements to it. One is the kind of the long-term status of the LEP versus becoming a formal member of a very important governance arrangement supporting the Freeport. I think the two things don't necessarily match up very neatly, and making that commitment for a longer period of time than possibly this structure will be in existence is perhaps not the wisest thing to do. Now, the second thing, of course, is that it would require a change to the way in which we operate Select Limited. So as it stands, joining would bring liabilities and risks. Membership would obviously bring those things, and obviously the agreed structure of CELEP Limited is that no monies or assets or liabilities are held by the company. So if any of that were to change, then we need to go through a process of really considering, what we need to do to sort of change the operating position of CELEP Limited and how we run that. I think on the flip side of all of that is that actually not being a formal member of the Freeport takes nothing away from what we would continue to do on a week-to-week basis in terms of supporting it. So, we're very actively engaged with both the officers supporting the Freeport and New Anglia LEP in feeding our input into the development of it, as you'd expect from anybody who seeks our expertise across the area. We're more than happy to help, and some of the tax modelling work has benefited from contributions from us too. Not financial contributions, I hasten to add, but just thought contributions. So, just nothing will change in respect of both the engagement with the Freeport and the Chief Exec of the Freeport, nor will it change in respect of how we engage with New Anglia LEP on it as well. But I just think that actually becoming a formal member would not necessarily bring any benefit to the LEP, and we can stay absolutely engaged in the way that we are. We've obviously had this discussion with the board, are very aware of this, because obviously they've gone through a legal process as Councillor Wagland's been involved in to establish the Freeport on legal terms. They're comfortable with the position that we'll take, and they're very keen that we stay involved in the way that I've just described. So it might feel instinctively like a strange recommendation to make, but in the circumstances and in the way in which CELEP Limited is structured, it's, to my mind, exactly the right route to take.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Any observations or questions for Adam on that? Yes, Mark.
Yeah, I'm actually pleased with the decision, actually, because obviously I'm a member of the Thames Freeport as of yesterday. Yeah, so it's good that there is two Freeports in this area. I know it's very awkward because one's part of London, part of Anglia, so it's all very awkward. So this decision, I think, is good that the board can stay out of both, but it'll be helpful to both. And I think there's obviously not mentioned in there, but I think the Thames is a growth area across the Thames estuary, and then we've got the Freeport East. I think it's a great decision.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any other comments? Yeah, Harry, sorry.
Yeah. Well, one question and one statement, really, Chair, if I may. I suppose the question, Adam, is what is New Anglia's position? And the statement is, I can't help thinking, having read that, is that would we have been in the same position 4 years ago if we'd have been discussing it then? I think we would have wanted to be on the board and very influential in the process going forward. So I think it's a timing issue that we made the decision that we have, or we're looking to make the decision we have, which, as Mark says, with the logic, and I agree with it. But it's a great shame. It's sort of almost a reflection of where the CELEP currently is. So question as to where New Anglia is, and just a statement of timing, really.
Thank you, Barry. Adam, do you want to comment on that? Respond to that?
Yeah, in terms of the statement, Perry, I think you're absolutely right. I would completely agree. I think if it was 4 years ago, we would take a different view. The situation with New Anglia is that whilst their operation will change as a result of devolution and some very clear, and particularly in Suffolk, some very clear moves to change things there, I think it's probably fair to say that, well, certainly my reading of the situation is that, first of all, they've got a big team. Secondly, the Freeport is probably number one priority in respect of what they do. And thirdly, I think when devolution hits in their neck of the woods, that the LEP will continue, albeit sliced in two. So there are lots of reasons to sort of why they would associate much more legally strongly with it than we have. And also they've got one of their enterprise zones, Gateway 14, I think, is in respect of site for the Freeport as well. So it's a different situation for them, which is reflected, I think, in the way in which they've gone about it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
This is my only concern is that at the moment, we've got a fantastic relationship with the staff team at Freeport East and the board. If they ever got grumpy with us, they could completely ignore us and not invite us to anything at all. Hopefully that will never happen. But it would be nice if we could have some kind of statutory, almost you want to be statutory consultees. Is there any alternative status that we could have that gets us a seat at the table, albeit not a voting member or shareholder, or whatever it might be? Something slightly more positive. So we're on the note paying. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we can absolutely take that one away.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good point, because I mean it does actually, I mean, Harwich is quite an important component, isn't it, of Freeport East, which Harwich is us. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I was going to say, couldn't Salop have a more official title such as associate or consultee,
Observer or something.
not so legally binding?
Yeah. Councillor Wagner.
I would only mention that I think that there are some difficulties attached to that because this is a company limited by guarantee, and therefore you will be able to, as Adam was suggesting, consider how that would actually work in practice.
Okay, so what I suggest then, taking all these points into account, is that we do agree to do this, but we ask Adam, we tried Adam with finding some form of situation where our status is recognised.
If we're doing that with Freeport, please should we not be also doing it with the Thames Freeport too? It should be equal.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
It's all of it.
Can we, okay, well, is everyone happy with that outcome?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Good. In that case, we'll move over on to the item 9, which is the Growth Hub update. And I'll hand over to Jo Simmons, please. Jo, good to see you.
Thank you, Chris.
Have that hot seat. And keep it.
Get a good view from here. So I'm going to give you a quick update on where we are with the Growth Hub this year and try and put it a little bit in context with the business support arena and tell you what our current thinking is on this space. As you might recall, I briefed the board back in the summer about the fact that this year Growth Hub core funding was reduced by 50%, as it was for all LEPs. So instead of running with 980,000 this year, we are delivering the service with just 445,000. And at that time, we thought that we were going to make some modifications to the delivery model to make that feasible. So what has happened since is that we have reduced the number of, well, since April actually, we've reduced significantly the number of navigators and advisors, essentially the human resource that we have across the LEP area to engage with businesses. We've significantly reduced and consolidated into a single part-time role, the communications and engagement resource that the service has. We've eliminated the data and monitoring resource that was available to us across the whole area, and become much more reactive as opposed to a proactive service. And those changes, whilst uncomfortable, have meant that we've been able to continue delivering a service unbroken right across the whole patch. And we've been able to do that in a way that's compliant with the grant funding agreement. At the time, back in the spring, early summer, when we were agreeing these modifications, we also decided that to compensate for the sort of paring back of the whole service, we allocated circa £80,000 of the core budget to invest in optimising the websites and the digital offer. And so sort of along the thinking that we've got less navigation and advisor resource to actually engage with our businesses. So let's enable the business community to self-serve as much as they can and look for resources online that aren't currently there. And that was agreed and in train, but we've watched what's happening over the summer and entering into the autumn. And in the context of the autumn statements, and listening to what the businesses are saying and trying to sort of crystal ball gaze around what's the likelihood of funding for next year, if any, or reduced core funding for Growth Hub. It didn't seem value for money anymore to invest that money in a website that would only, and digital assets that would only really come to fruition next financial year. So the risk was increasing that we would invest in improving a digital offering that may then become redundant next year, or equally as importantly, would need resources committed this year to maintain it next year. And that became quite a significant factor. So we liaised with BEIS and among the Growth Hub lead authorities, and we have agreed to repurpose that money into immediate business support for Q4, which is largely around increasing the specialist advisors to deal with current business issues, increasing engagement to make businesses more aware of the service offer, and doing some support investment, particularly around peer networking. So what we found is that the 3 different growth hubs have all chosen different priorities to invest that money in. So
Afraid that we missed Graham's Christmas cracker joke there, and anything that followed it.
If Graham would stop making me laugh at this end of the table, that was not part of the Growth Hub update.
Maybe it should be.
Perhaps it should have been. Okay, so I think what we've done this year just shows how adaptable and flexible the Growth Hub needs to be in the year. We've worked over the last few years to try and become flexible and adaptable and to change our shape, but nothing quite so rapid as what we've as how we've delivered this year. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So I think there is a good news story around how we've been able to collaborate, deliver, continue with the service despite the sort of changing circumstances underneath our feet and the uncertainty around funding. With the funding situation, we're now clearly lobbying government to get some clarity ASAP, because what we don't want to do is find the service in the same situation it was last March, where we were waiting for funding confirmation, but we hadn't been able to do any substantial planning. And that had a significant ripple effect on delivery, on members of staff, on knowing whether the service was going to carry on from April this year. So we need to learn from that last year and to start to do some scenario planning and earlier conversations from January next year to really work out what we do in the absence of funding, what we do if we have further reductions in funding, and also to have a collective sort of view on what the business support landscape is looking like generally, because some of our biggest business support projects that have been using European funding are coming to an end this year. All of that European funding goes, and what we are seeing in its place is going to be more local schemes funded by UK SPF and as yet unknown nationally funded schemes. So what we're starting to see is national funding calls coming online that we are not necessarily aware of in advance, but we have to be quite reactive to. And the Create Growth programme that Sarah mentioned earlier is an excellent example of how we as a business support community will need to be very quick off the mark when we see these open calls come through, so that we can be in the game for drawing down national business support investment. So in terms of the Growth Hub, we need to start planning for Q4 early next year. There's already it's already clear that because of the annual funding cycle for Growth Hub core funding, certain members of staff are already being given a heads up that they will go on notice of redundancy from the beginning of January. So very the lead authority is already starting to have to make decisions about how to manage the service if we don't hear about funding early in the quarter, or if funding is reduced. So that planning will start. I will convene the local authorities to start working through scenarios. And also I think it's important to feed into that scenario planning what we think is going to emerge in the wider business support landscape, because obviously the core the core activity of the service is to triage and diagnose and signpost businesses onto the types of business support activities that they need and can most benefit from. So if that landscape is changing, the Growth Hub needs to be absolutely on the ball with that and understand what that change looks like. So I think that we will be doing some work around that in Q4 as well.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any questions or observations for Joe on that presentation? No. Okay. In that case, sorry.
Sorry, I feel like I keep on saying things in this meeting, but first of all, my congratulations, thanks to you and to all of the Growth Hub teams for all of the work that they're doing under incredibly difficult times. I guess the question I had was about the data and insights, because what we saw with the Create Growth programme was the data and insights was absolutely imperative in terms of kind of getting that bid in. And actually, interestingly, there's that kind of local regional, push-pull thing that's happening at the moment, and the Create Growth actually is wider than the Select region alone. So I suppose it was a question about that, because as you quite rightly pointed out, you're having to react really quickly to these calls that are going out with very short timeline. And is there more that we could and should be doing on any of that? I guess it's to both of you, really.
I suppose that was a really good exercise to test, to learn how we do that. And I think in terms of being able to provide data and intelligence to any opportunity that comes forward, we have become smarter within the Select team, so that we're linking the Growth Hub side of our remit with the strategy and data and intelligence side, and joining those two things up much more strongly so that we can react better. But that's within the Select context. The difficulty, I think, and this was presented by another funding opportunity, which wasn't quite so. It wasn't going to work so well, because what we're seeing as well in some of those funding opportunities is the need for those business support initiatives to align with Growth Hub services. So we might have a conundrum on our plates if we see funding opportunities for, say, 3 to 5 years, aligning with the Growth Hub service, which is only getting annual funding. So we need to be clever about that and be clever about the way in which we describe what that alignment will be, because it shouldn't stop us from drawing down further investment.
I would just say, obviously, data and intelligence is really important, because it's that helps you identify a need. That's the thing. So it's probably one of the most vital things that you can have looking at going forward. But we do have to, obviously, it's a Select decision. I'm just talking now somebody who delivers a service. So I do as I'm told for once. So, we have to adapt to the new funding envelope. So I can, I totally agree with decisions that have been made. Obviously, the funding was dramatically reduced, but we were very fortunate in Kent that it didn't impact on us, because an additional funding was put forward from KCC. So we still had our full range of service. So we haven't been, obviously, come next year, that will be a different case. But the problem is the business support landscape at the moment, nobody knows what's going on. No. It's all very, and when things do come out, there was a bid come out last week, and you literally had 9 days. Yeah. Well, it was a national bid, where it used to be regional before. So of course and there is so much data that you need to get forms to fill in. It just, the only person who could successfully do it was the current incumbent, was the only person who could really do it. So, there's a lot of work that we're doing as a chamber network with government around this, because we need far more notice. And as you said, some of the programs are coming out with three years. Well, that's great. But if we don't know from year to year what the future is of the Growth Hub, how can we actually tap into that? So there's a whole lot of questions that Joe and the Select team are looking into, and then we're supporting as well.
Well, if I may, in essence, you asked about, is there anything we can do better? I think it's going to be about collaboration, and the ability to come together, whichever partners are relevant to a particular funding opportunity. It's about those partners coming together quickly and being open and able to work together for the good of the financial drawdown.
Good, thank you. I must say it's ironic that a government that is supposed to identify growth as being one of the major issues facing the country seems unable to take it seriously in terms of funding growth funds. Yeah. Anyway, so what we're being asked to do is thank you very much, Joe. We're being asked to note three things. First, the provision of consistent growth hub service across SELAP from the 1st of April 2022 and modifications of the delivery model to accommodate a 50% funding cut. So note that. Secondly, to note the repurposing of £82,000 worth of Growth Hub core funding originally allocated to optimising the Growth Hub websites and digital offer to better meet the immediate needs of businesses. And finally, to note the changing shape of business support provision through 23-24 and the likely need for Growth Hubs to continue to adapt accordingly. Good. Okay, that's so noted. Now we'll have to ask Sarah to leave the room, and I'll hand over to Adam.
Thanks, Chris. So my only part in this is to say thank you to the recruitment panel who supported this process, led by Liz, but also with Keith, with Councillor Glazier there, and with Jeremy Kurzweil, who've led the process for the recruitment of a new chair of the LEP. And just to give you an indication of the process that they've gone through. So initially met a couple of months ago, I think, very quickly moved to agree on a job description and how we would get that out, obviously widely and transparently across the area. The next stage obviously was to advertise a job and the opportunity and open up for any questions on it from anybody who's interested. There was a slight delay to the process at that point, just as we were making sure that we'd put the opportunity on lots of local sites across the LEP as well. So that was all achieved in the end. Obviously, and then there was a process of shortlisting and a final interview. So a process that was undertaken very efficiently. Nice to be able to be in a position where we can bring it to a conclusion earlier than was originally planned in respect of the recommendation to the board. But I think that's all that I've really got to say, except for reiterating thanks to Liz and the panel, and hand over to Liz to bring the outcome to the board.
Thanks, Adam. I'd like to also say thanks to Keith Glazier and Jeremy in his absence. It was an interesting process, as outlined by Adam. We did have some interesting candidates, but there was one candidate who was significantly stronger than any other candidates, which was then confirmed at interview. And some of the priorities which Adam outlined before, we felt there was a real alignment. There's obviously a real benefit to recruiting somebody who knows the systems so well. But that wasn't really the only reason. I mean, Sarah really is an exceptional candidate, and we had no hesitation in recommending her to become the new chair. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, Keith.
No, just to endorse exactly that. I think there was no doubt in any of our minds that Sarah was the candidate that could not only deliver, but deliver straight away. And equally, her ambition also, I think, shone through as well. So that was an important part.
Excellent. Are there any questions for Liz? Observations? No?
I should probably add, Chris, that on the basis of, should the recommendation be agreed by the board, we've obviously got a process to run to appoint a new deputy chair of the LEP.
Yep.
Which is something that we'll undertake as a priority.
Sure.
But obviously didn't want to jump any.
No. Okay. Good. In that case, I will ask you to resolve to appoint Sarah Dance as the chair of SELAP with immediate effect. And the immediate effect is, of course, because my appointment, the terms of my appointment, which were extended, clearly terminate on the appointment of the new one. So I step down with immediate effect. Everyone happy with that?
Yeah. Support the appointment.
Great. Okay. Someone asked Sarah to invite Sarah to come back.
Watch it build.
Well, you haven't run off, Sarah. Well, congratulations. I must say, for my part, I couldn't be happier that Sarah has been appointed. I couldn't think of a better candidate, and I think I personally endorse with thanks the recommendation from the panel. I think, Sarah, since I have now formally stepped down, you're in the chair.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I'd just like to say, from the bottom of my heart, a huge thank you to you all. I'm really honoured to be taking over this role. And, I know we've got challenging times ahead, but, I really do believe sincerely in the power of the partnership to deliver things, and the constant refrain that I always say is, what is the added value that we can bring? It's not just about the lessons that we've learned over the last few years, but actually also about the power of the partnership to do things differently. And I think you've heard some examples of that today. I just wanted to say my own huge personal thanks to Chris. Chris, you have taught me so much. I have learnt a huge amount from you. Your advice and guidance and your mentorship of me has been incredible. The way that you have guided this board through really difficult and challenging times has been incredible. Your integrity, your business sense, your ability to cut through any rubbish has been brilliant. So from the bottom of my heart, I'm sure all of the board would agree. Thank you so much. I wanted to hand over to Graham, who is going to say a few words.
Thank you, Sarah. First of all, delighted by your appointment. Second, I'm sorry, you now get the long version of Sarah's 2 sentences from me. Life's complex business, lots of decisions you have to make along the way. Some matter, some don't. Some go well. My wife's choice of husband 38 years ago has gone so far, so good. Some very badly. My investment in a bowler hat company was a bloody disaster. One of the best decisions I've ever made was nearly 7 years ago. It's a considerable period of turmoil in CELEP. Our governance was confused. We then got it on a rather more level footing with a triumvirate of the federated area chairs, sort of calmed it all down again. And then we started seeking a new chair. And I was privileged to chair that appointment panel. And I feel the strong candidates, one was absolutely outstanding, that was Chris. It was a momentous decision. It's worn very well indeed. Not quite 38 years, but nearly 7. And he steered this fairly unwieldy ship very successfully through some tricky waters. We were delighted to appoint somebody with such strong connections, both in business and politically at a local and national level. And these have proved absolutely invaluable as CELEP has wended its way forward. Chris brought very senior experience from the worlds of law and banking. And despite the ups and downs of CELEP, I think this was an easier nut for you to crack than the student loans company, your previous major public appointment. Chris's focus was, is and remains, for all the best possible reasons, on strong governance, clear processes, integrity of the process. And that's gained this board and this organisation the respect of politicians and business alike. And for that, we're very grateful. It was apparent to that extent that you were asked, or Chris was asked, to chair the Catalyst South group by his peers and use this as a springboard to lobby at a national level. Chris has represented those interests at the national level very effectively, overcoming the quirks of the Southeast LEP and its strange federated structure. And you've always strongly emphasised the contrast between the apparent wealth and plenty in the Southeast and significant deprivation which we find. And you've also beaten the drum for the largest LEP with its strange structure. I wasn't present at the Jake Berry meeting, but I gather that was quite a goodie. Chris is a crisp chair. Everyone with something to say gets to say it, but there's not much room for waffle. And Chris personally is a legendary anti-waffler. Email correspondence is blindingly efficient, verging on terse. emanating from all over the world, from ski resorts, tennis courts, and but by goodness, it comes back quickly. If you don't want an answer fast, don't ask it. After slightly gentle teasing, Chris, though, I have to emphasise that you've mediated and counselled in many of the tensions inevitable in this complex structure. You've been supportive of Adam and the team. Without you, we are nothing. And most of all, you've presided over the delivery of an excess of £800 million capital programme into the southeast of England. Nearly £1 billion worth of diverse projects have been brought here. You'll be missed. We look forward with positive and excitement to Sarah's reign, but know that her approach, as she's just said, have been informed by working with you, and you've laid some very strong foundations for her to continue on. I was trying to quiz you before we started as to what you were going to do next. I got a very gentle pushback that you, not much, I don't quite believe it. You won't be able to sit still. And so I'm sure we await a significant role for you in the future, but wherever that future path may lead, we wish you very well indeed.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Quite It's not much. I know you're Chris Cherry, but my turn. So on behalf of indeed the people of this corner of South East England, we thank you wholeheartedly for everything you've done over the past 7 years. Thank you, Chris.
I mean, this has been as I said to the Jasmine Vardaman people, one of the great delights of this job, this board, has been to see projects grow and look at a facility like this, for example, which really wouldn't have existed but for what all of us collectively have done. I look at things like the medical school again, which collectively would not have existed without all of our efforts. But there are many projects and things that have happened over the southeast, and it's been great to be in an area where I've grown up, lived all my life, been educated. It's been great to see more of it, which this opportunity has given me. So thank you, Graham and others, for appointing me, and thank you all, everybody, for the enormous support that you have given, unquestioning support. Adam and his team have been brilliant, but from all board members, the federated chairs, all the officials who work for the federated areas, it's been a wonderful team effort, and I thank you very, very much. And I wish you, Sarah, all the best. I couldn't be happier that you are leading the LEP into the next phase of its existence, and I look forward to seeing more of your successes on the sidelines.
So as you gave me the chair immediately, there is any other business? Is there any? The crisp chairing. Oh, one over there. Sorry, then.
Just one small point is about the agenda for the next meeting. Would it be possible to include the strategic investment plan for Transport for South East and maybe get some of the team here just to explain how that has and sell it before it gets formalised at the end of March? You want to recheck Keith's forward, anyone?
And Adam, we will look at that. Thank you very much.
Good.
Okay. Due to Chris's brilliant crisp chairing, we're finishing early. So there will be a tour, I believe, of the building for those of you who are able to stay, and lunch.
And a very posh lunch.
So a very posh lunch. So I hope you can stay and enjoy. Just to finish again with my huge thanks to Chris. Thank you very much. Have a